Throughout history, the figure of the Antichrist has fascinated and terrified. This dark symbol of ultimate evil, foretold in ancient texts, has woven its way through centuries of theological debate and cultural anxiety. Yet the modern image of the Antichrist owes much to the world of cinema. Films like Rosemary's Baby and The Omen have seared their chilling visions of this malevolent figure into the public consciousness. These cinematic portrayals, with their haunting atmospheres and gripping narratives, have shaped how we imagine the Antichrist today. But what lies beneath these stories? How do these fictional depictions compare to the historical and theological origins of the Antichrist? Journey with us into the shadowy past, uncovering the coded messages of Revelation and the early Christian warnings against false prophets. Discover how a figure meant to symbolize the corruption of power and the ultimate deceiver has been transformed into a harbinger of apocalypse and a political bogeyman. From the Emperor Nero, symbolized by the number 666, to the medieval and Renaissance depictions in art and literature, the Antichrist has evolved over centuries. And today, this myth infiltrates every aspect of our culture, from horror films to conspiracy theories, morphing with each passing political era. Prepare to delve into the true story behind the myth, to separate fact from fiction, and to understand how the Antichrist has become a symbol that haunts our collective imagination. The concept of the Antichrist emerges vividly in the New Testament, particularly in the books of 1 John, 2 John, and Revelation. These ancient texts paint a chilling picture of a figure who denies Christ and deceives believers. In 1 John and 2 John, the Antichrist is described as a person or force opposing Christ, leading many astray with false teachings. This ominous presence is not a singular being, but rather a representation of many deceivers who threaten the faith. However, it is the book of Revelation that cements the Antichrist's role in apocalyptic literature. Written by John of Patmos around 95 AD, Revelation is a visionary text filled with symbolic imagery and cryptic messages. At its heart lies the vision of the Antichrist as a beast rising from the sea, endowed with great power by the dragon, a symbol of Satan. This beast, with its 10 horns and 7 heads, becomes a nightmarish figure, performing great wonders to deceive the world. Revelation was composed during a time of intense persecution of Christians under the Roman Empire. The Roman emperors, particularly Nero and Domitian, were notorious for their brutal treatment of Christians, who were often scapegoated for disasters and subjected to cruel punishments. This oppressive environment necessitated the use of coded language in Revelation, allowing Christians to communicate their hope and resistance without directly incriminating themselves. Central to this apocalyptic vision is the number 666, the mark of the beast. Scholars widely interpret this number as a reference to Emperor Nero, who reigned from 54 to 68 AD. Nero's reign was marked by tyranny, extravagance, and the ruthless suppression of dissent, including the persecution of Christians. Using gematria, a form of numerology common in Jewish tradition, the letters of Nero's name can be calculated to total 666. This numerical code identified Nero as the embodiment of evil and an enemy of Christ, an Antichrist. John of Patmos, writing Revelation during his exile on the island of Patmos, crafted a message of hope and endurance for persecuted Christians. The coded language of Revelation allowed the text to be disseminated among believers without attracting the immediate wrath of Roman authorities. The vivid and terrifying imagery served both to conceal the true meaning from outsiders and to vividly illustrate the spiritual battle between good and evil. The apocalyptic vision in Revelation offered a way for early Christians to make sense of their suffering and to foresee a divine victory over their oppressors. It portrayed the Antichrist not just as a future adversary, but as a present reality, a symbol of the corrupt and oppressive forces they faced daily. In the early years of Christianity, the concept of the Antichrist was a powerful and unsettling idea that permeated the teachings and writings of the time. Early Christian writers expanded on the biblical depictions, shaping the narrative of the Antichrist into a multifaceted figure of ultimate deception and evil. One of the earliest and most influential figures to discuss the Antichrist was Irenaeus, a bishop of Lyon in the 2nd century. In his work, Against Heresies, Irenaeus warned of a future deceiver who would perform false miracles and lead many astray. He identified the Antichrist as a singular person who would embody satanic power opposing Christ and the Church in the final days. Irenaeus's writings emphasized vigilance and faithfulness, urging Christians to recognize and resist the deceptions of the Antichrist. Tertullian, another prominent early Christian writer, also contributed to the development of the Antichrist narrative. He described the Antichrist as a false Christ, a counterfeit savior who would claim to bring peace, but ultimately bring destruction. Tertullian's emphasis on the Antichrist's deceitful nature resonated with the fears of early Christians who faced persecution and internal divisions. The early Christian understanding of the Antichrist was deeply influenced by apocalyptic literature, which was characterized by vivid and often terrifying visions of the end times. These writings provided a framework for interpreting contemporary events and understanding the cosmic struggle between good and evil. The Antichrist was seen as a central figure in this struggle, a personification of the forces arrayed against God's plan. Texts like the Sibylline Oracles and the Apocalypse of Peter offered detailed and imaginative descriptions of the Antichrist and the tribulations that would accompany his rise. The Sibylline Oracles, a collection of prophetic writings, described the Antichrist as a great deceiver who would lead people into idolatry and wickedness, bringing about a period of intense suffering before his eventual downfall. Similarly, the Apocalypse of Peter provided a graphic depiction of the torments awaiting the wicked, including those who followed the Antichrist. These texts, while not included in the canonical New Testament, were widely read and influential in the early Christian community. They depicted the Antichrist as a tyrant who would usher in a period of great suffering and test the faith of believers. The role of apocalyptic literature in shaping the Antichrist narrative cannot be overstated. These works fueled the imagination of early Christians, reinforcing the idea of a cosmic battle between good and evil. The vivid and terrifying descriptions of the Antichrist and his deeds served to unite the early Christian community in their beliefs and practices. The solidification of the Antichrist into a singular future figure also helped the early church consolidate power and authority. By promoting a unified vision of the Antichrist, the Church could counteract the numerous sects and heresies that threatened its cohesion. This centralization of the Antichrist narrative provided a common enemy and a clear doctrine that could be used to unify believers and marginalize dissenting voices. The threat of the Antichrist became a powerful tool for the Church to enforce orthodoxy and maintain control over the burgeoning Christian population. As the early Church Fathers articulated their visions of the Antichrist, they laid the groundwork for centuries of theological speculation and artistic representation. The figure of the Antichrist, with its roots in apocalyptic literature and early Christian teachings, would continue to evolve, reflecting the changing fears and hopes of the Christian community. This foundational period set the stage for the rich and complex portrayals of the Antichrist that would emerge in the medieval and Renaissance eras, and eventually in modern cinema. Early Christian teachings about the Antichrist were not just warnings about a distant future, but also commentaries on the present. The Antichrist represented both a future adversary and the immediate threats to the faith posed by false teachers and corrupt rulers. This duality made the Antichrist a versatile and enduring symbol in Christian thought. In the medieval period, the concept of the Antichrist underwent significant development, becoming deeply embedded in the religious and cultural fabric of Europe. The Antichrist was depicted as a tyrannical ruler who would appear at the end of times, leading a great rebellion against God. This figure was often associated with the devil, embodying ultimate evil and deception. Medieval theologians such as St. Augustine and Thomas Aquinas further refined the image of the Antichrist. Augustine, in The City of God, described the Antichrist as a direct adversary of Christ, a deceiver who would perform false miracles to lead people away from the true faith. Aquinas expanded on this, emphasizing the Antichrist's role as a figure of immense power and charisma who would attempt to usurp Christ's place in the world. The influence of these theological perspectives extended into art and literature. Medieval manuscripts, often richly illuminated, depicted the Antichrist as a monstrous figure or a corrupt ruler, serving as both warnings and tools for religious instruction. Works like the Liber Floridus included detailed illustrations and descriptions of the Antichrist, presenting him as a central figure in the apocalyptic narrative. Literature of the time also played a crucial role in shaping popular beliefs about the Antichrist. Texts such as the Vision of Tundal and the Golden Legend contained vivid portrayals of the Antichrist and the torments awaiting his followers. Public sermons and mystery plays further dramatized the Antichrist's rise and defeat, bringing these narratives to a wide audience. The depiction of the Antichrist in medieval thought reflected the anxieties and fears of the time, symbolizing ultimate evil and the threats posed by heresy, political instability, and the unknown. With the dawn of the Renaissance, the image of the Antichrist underwent significant transformation. The Renaissance, marked by a revival of classical learning and a renewed interest in humanism, brought new perspectives to the Antichrist narrative. Influential figures like Dante Alighieri reimagined the Antichrist in their works, blending classical and Christian elements to create a more complex portrayal. Dante's Divine Comedy, particularly the Inferno, depicted the Antichrist as part of the broader tapestry of sin and redemption. This period saw the Antichrist depicted not just as an external threat, but as a potential within every human being, reflecting the Renaissance focus on human nature and personal responsibility. The rediscovery of classical texts during the Renaissance enriched the Antichrist narrative. Ancient myths and legends were woven into the Christian story, creating a more layered portrayal. The Antichrist became a symbol of the broader human experience, encompassing the complexities of sin, power, and redemption. As the Renaissance transformed the image of the Antichrist, it laid the groundwork for modern interpretations. The blend of classical, medieval, and humanist elements created a rich narrative, setting the stage for the cinematic depictions that have captured the public imagination, bringing the ancient and medieval fears of the Antichrist into the modern age. Rosemary's Baby, released in 1968, was directed by Roman Polanski and based on Ira Levin's novel. The film tells the story of Rosemary Woodhouse, a young woman who moves into a new apartment with her husband, Guy. The couple soon befriends their eccentric and intrusive neighbours, Minnie and Roman Castevet. When Rosemary becomes pregnant, she begins to experience strange and disturbing occurrences, leading her to suspect that her neighbours have sinister plans for her unborn child. The narrative reveals that Guy has made a pact with the Castevets, who are members of a satanic cult. In exchange for his professional success, Guy agrees to allow Rosemary to be impregnated by Satan. The film culminates in the horrifying revelation that Rosemary's Baby is the Antichrist, destined to bring about an era of darkness and chaos. Rosemary's Baby presents the Antichrist not as a distant apocalyptic figure, but as an innocent-looking infant born into a modern urban environment. This portrayal taps into deep-seated fears of corruption and evil lurking beneath the surface of everyday life. The depiction of the Antichrist in the film is subtle yet profoundly disturbing, focusing on the psychological horror experienced by Rosemary rather than overt supernatural displays. The movie was instrumental in embedding now taken-for-granted ideas about the Antichrist, that he would be the direct offspring of Satan, conceived through magical rituals, and supported by a secret cult dedicated to his birth and upbringing. In addition, the film reflected and crystallized several cultural anxieties of the time. During the 1960s, there was a growing fascination with the occult, partly spurred by the countercultural movements that sought to explore alternative spiritualities and challenge traditional religious norms. Books and films about witchcraft, Satanism, and supernatural phenomena were becoming increasingly popular, reflecting and fueling public curiosity and fear about the occult. The sensationalism of events like the Manson family murders in 1969, which involved a cult-like group committing heinous acts under the supposed influence of a charismatic leader, further embedded the fear of secret cults in the collective consciousness. This period also saw the publication of books like The Satanic Bible by Anton LaVey, which, despite its more theatrical than genuinely sinister intentions, contributed to the perception of satanic rituals and their potential societal impact. Additionally, the Cold War era fostered a pervasive sense of paranoia and mistrust. The idea of hidden enemies within society, whether communist spies or satanic cults, resonated deeply with a public already anxious about unseen threats. This climate of fear and suspicion provided fertile ground for the narrative of the Antichrist being born through satanic rituals orchestrated by a secret cult. Upon its release, Rosemary's Baby was met with critical acclaim and commercial success. The film's psychological depth and innovative storytelling set it apart from other horror films of the time, earning it a place as a classic in the genre. It was praised for its performances, particularly Mia Farrow's portrayal of Rosemary, and for its chilling atmosphere and suspenseful narrative. The cultural impact of Rosemary's Baby was significant, influencing countless films and works of fiction that followed. It brought the concept of the Antichrist into the public consciousness in a new and terrifying way, making it a central figure in the modern horror lexicon. The film's exploration of themes such as betrayal, autonomy, and the presence of evil in everyday life resonated deeply with audiences, reflecting the anxieties and fears of the era. Rosemary's Baby also sparked discussions about the role of women in society, the nature of evil, and the influence of the occult. Its success demonstrated the power of horror to explore complex psychological and social issues, paving the way for future films to delve into similar themes. Comparing Rosemary's Baby to early Christian and medieval depictions of the Antichrist reveals both continuity and transformation. In early Christian writings, the Antichrist is a deceiver within the community, undermining faith from within. Medieval depictions often presented the Antichrist as a monstrous external force, a tyrant who would rise to power and lead humanity astray. Rosemary's Baby modernizes these themes, portraying the Antichrist as an insidious presence within the safe confines of domestic life, a threat that is both deeply personal and universally terrifying. By presenting the Antichrist narrative in a contemporary setting and connecting it with deeply ingrained fears of the occult and secret societies, Rosemary's Baby crystallized and amplified these anxieties, bringing them to life in a way that felt immediate and profoundly unsettling. The legacy of Rosemary's Baby endures, continuing to influence filmmakers and captivate audiences with its haunting portrayal of the Antichrist. It stands as a testament to the enduring power of the Antichrist myth, reshaped and retold through the lens of modern cinema. In 1976, the Omen further solidified the terrifying image of the Antichrist, introducing a new dimension to the myth that would leave a lasting impact on both the horror genre and societal views of this malevolent figure. Directed by Richard Donner, The Omen tells the story of Damien Thorn, a young boy who is revealed to be the Antichrist. The plot of The Omen begins with American diplomat Robert Thorn, who, after the tragic stillbirth of his own child, secretly adopts an orphaned infant, Damien. Unbeknownst to Robert and his wife Catherine, Damien is actually the son of Satan, destined to bring about the apocalypse. As Damien grows, a series of horrifying and inexplicable events unfold, revealing his true nature. The film culminates in Robert's desperate attempt to stop Damien, only to meet a tragic end himself. The Omen was followed by several sequels: Damien Omen 2, 1978, Omen 3, The Final Conflict, 1981, and a 2006 remake of the original film. In Damien Omen 2, the story continues with Damien as a teenager, gradually discovering his dark heritage and the immense power he wields. Omen 3, the final conflict, depicts Damien as an adult, now a powerful political leader determined to fulfill his destiny and usher in an era of darkness. The character of Damien Thorne in the Omen series is a detailed and chilling portrayal of the Antichrist. Unlike Rosemary's Baby, which focused on the psychological horror of Rosemary's ordeal, The Omen presents a more direct and expansive exploration of the Antichrist's rise to power. Damien is depicted as a malevolent force of nature, his innocence masking a sinister purpose. The films explore his manipulation of those around him, his ability to cause death and destruction, and his eventual realization of his identity as the Antichrist. The Omen series delves deeply into themes of prophecy, destiny, and the nature of evil. Prophecies foretelling Damien's rise and the biblical significance of his actions are central to the narrative. The films present a world where destiny is inescapable, and the Antichrist's power is a force that cannot be denied. This portrayal aligns with the apocalyptic literature of early Christianity, where the Antichrist is depicted as an inevitable harbinger of doom. One of the most significant contributions of the Omen to the Antichrist myth is the solidification of the idea that the Antichrist would be a political figure, a world leader whose most direct analogue is the President of the United States. Damien's journey from a seemingly innocent child to a powerful politician reflects the fears of hidden evil rising to positions of immense influence and control. This notion has taken a strong hold in popular culture, often being invoked in political discourse and conspiracy theories. The Omen had a profound impact on the horror genre and societal views of the Antichrist. The film's success and their depiction of a politically powerful Antichrist have influenced countless subsequent works of fiction, solidifying the image of the Antichrist as a global leader. This portrayal resonates with contemporary fears of political corruption and the potential for immense power to be wielded by malevolent forces. The legacy of The Omen continues to shape the narrative of the Antichrist in modern culture. Its chilling depiction of Damien Thorne, the integration of biblical prophecy, and the portrayal of the Antichrist as a political figure have left an indelible mark on the collective imagination. The series stands as a testament to the enduring fascination with the Antichrist myth and its ability to evolve and reflect the anxieties of each era. Beyond Rosemary's Baby and The Omen, the concept of the Antichrist has found its way into numerous other films and television shows, becoming a ubiquitous presence in horror and supernatural media. These portrayals continue to draw from traditional lore while also shaping contemporary perceptions of the Antichrist. In End of Days, 1999, directed by Peter Hyams and starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, the narrative centers on a retired cop who must thwart Satan's plan to conceive the Antichrist just before the turn of the millennium. The film combines action and horror, presenting the Antichrist as a being whose arrival is heralded by signs and prophecies, echoing themes from apocalyptic literature, and reinforcing the idea of an imminent catastrophic event linked to the birth of this malevolent figure. The Seventh Sign, 1988, directed by Carl Schultz and starring Demi Moore, explores a similar theme of impending doom and the birth of the Antichrist. The story revolves around a pregnant woman who discovers that her unborn child is destined to be the Antichrist, and she must prevent the fulfillment of a series of apocalyptic prophecies. This film taps into the fear of hidden evil within the domestic sphere, much like Rosemary's Baby, while drawing heavily on biblical themes and symbols to craft its narrative. Television shows have also embraced the Antichrist trope, integrating it into long-running series with complex mythologies. Supernatural, which aired from 2005 to 2020, frequently featured the Antichrist as a central figure in its apocalyptic storylines. The show depicted the Antichrist as a powerful and conflicted being, caught between the forces of heaven and hell, and often explored themes of destiny, free will, and redemption. Supernatural drew from a wide array of religious and mythological sources, blending them into a contemporary narrative that captivated viewers. Similarly, American Horror Story, Apocalypse, 2018, the 8th season of the popular anthology series, focused on the rise of the Antichrist and the ensuing apocalypse. The character Michael Langdon, born of a human woman and a demonic entity, embodies the Antichrist and brings about global destruction. This season delves into themes of prophecy, occult practices, and the battle between good and evil, reflecting traditional Antichrist lore while updating it for modern audiences. These films and television shows highlight the ubiquity of the Antichrist concept in popular media. The repeated use of these tropes has solidified certain narrative elements: the birth through supernatural means, the involvement of secret cults, and the Antichrist's role in triggering apocalyptic events, into a recognizable framework. Because these portrayals draw heavily from biblical and apocalyptic literature, they often blur the line between fiction and perceived reality, particularly for many Christians who see these narratives as more than mere stories. The Antichrist has become a series of filmic tropes that, due to their biblical origins, are taken by many as prophetic truths rather than creative fiction. This blending of religious belief with popular culture underscores the powerful impact of storytelling and the enduring influence of ancient myths on contemporary imagination. As the Antichrist continues to appear in various forms of media, these portrayals both reflect and shape societal fears and fascinations. The enduring presence of the Antichrist in film and television speaks to the deep-seated human need to grapple with the concepts of ultimate evil, destiny, and the battle between light and darkness. This modern reinterpretation of the Antichrist myth ensures that it remains a potent and terrifying symbol for generations to come. Films like Rosemary's Baby and The Omen, along with TV shows such as Supernatural and American Horror Story Apocalypse, have deeply influenced the portrayal of the Antichrist, weaving modern elements and mythology into the iconic image embraced by true believers. Rosemary's Baby introduced the Antichrist as a being born through a satanic ritual orchestrated by a secret cult. This film tapped into the fear of hidden forces manipulating events from the shadows, laying the groundwork for the notion of clandestine organizations influencing global affairs. The idea of a cabal working behind the scenes to bring about the birth of ultimate evil resonated deeply with audiences, shaping the way people perceive secret societies and their potential for malevolent influence. The Omen series took this concept further, portraying Damien Thorne as the Antichrist who rises to power and influence. Damien's journey from an innocent child to a political figure poised to bring about global destruction reinforced the idea of the Antichrist as a charismatic leader. The series depicted his ascent marked by sinister events and prophecies, solidifying the image of the Antichrist as a political figure with the potential to incite global chaos. Television shows like Supernatural and American Horror Story Apocalypse have continued to build on these themes. They present the Antichrist as a figure whose rise is facilitated by secretive and nefarious means, further embedding the notion of hidden, malevolent forces in the public imagination. These portrayals have influenced how people interpret contemporary political events, often seeing parallels between fictional narratives and real-world occurrences. Throughout history, various figures have been labelled as the Antichrist, especially during times of political upheaval and societal fear. Historical events and prominent leaders such as Napoleon Bonaparte and Adolf Hitler have significantly influenced this shift. Napoleon, with his vast conquests and ambition, was often viewed through the lens of apocalyptic prophecy. Similarly, Hitler's rise to power, his tyrannical rule, and the horrors of World War II led many to see him as the embodiment of the Antichrist, fulfilling ancient prophecies of a charismatic yet malevolent leader bringing about global destruction. The narrative of the Antichrist as a political figure has evolved over time, reflecting contemporary fears and political climates. In modern times, this idea has been heavily influenced by popular media, which often portrays the Antichrist as a world leader whose rise to power is facilitated by secretive and nefarious means. The tropes established in Rosemary's Baby and The Omen have permeated public consciousness, shaping the way people interpret and react to political events. Contemporary events and political climates continue to shape perceptions of the Antichrist. The rise of populist leaders, political polarization, and global crises have all contributed to the persistence of the Antichrist narrative in political discourse. Conspiracy theories frequently invoke the Antichrist, suggesting that certain political figures are part of a grand, sinister plan to bring about the apocalypse. The role of the Antichrist in conspiracy theories and political rhetoric is particularly concerning. These theories often draw on biblical and apocalyptic imagery, presenting political leaders as embodiments of ultimate evil. This narrative can be deeply polarizing, reinforcing fears and distrust among different segments of the population. It can also lead to dangerous consequences, as individuals driven by these beliefs may resort to extreme actions to combat the perceived threat. Examples of political figures labeled as the Antichrist in modern times are numerous. Presidents of the United States, such as Ronald Reagan, Barack Obama, and Donald Trump, have all been accused of being the Antichrist by various conspiracy theorists. These accusations are often rooted in political opposition and are fueled by the powerful imagery and narratives perpetuated by films and media. The influence of these portrayals and the spread of conspiracy theories highlight the dangers of allowing such myths to drive discourse. The Antichrist narrative, when applied to real-world politics, can undermine rational debate and contribute to an environment of fear and suspicion. It distorts perceptions of political leaders and events, making it difficult for individuals to discern truth from fiction. The intersection of the Antichrist myth with political and social contexts underscores the enduring power of this narrative. While it provides a compelling framework for understanding and dramatizing evil, its misuse in political rhetoric and conspiracy theories poses significant risks. The challenge lies in recognizing the line between myth and reality, ensuring that the powerful imagery of the Antichrist does not lead to harmful real-world consequences. As the Antichrist narrative continues to evolve, it is crucial to remain aware of its origins and the ways it has been shaped by history, culture, and media. By understanding the development of this myth, we can better navigate its presence in contemporary discourse and mitigate its potential to incite fear and division. The legacy of the Antichrist is a testament to the lasting impact of demonic stories on culture and society. From ancient texts to modern cinema, the figure of the Antichrist has continuously evolved, reflecting our deepest fears and societal anxieties. Films like Rosemary's Baby and The Omen have brought the myth to life in ways that deeply resonate with contemporary audiences, embedding the concept into the public consciousness and shaping our understanding of ultimate evil. Storytelling plays a crucial role in shaping and preserving the Antichrist narrative. The fascination with the occult and the supernatural is a reflection of human fears and desires, a way to grapple with the unknown and the unseen. Through stories, we explore the boundaries of good and evil, creating a narrative that is both a cautionary tale and a source of intrigue. The enduring intrigue of the Antichrist myth lies in its ability to balance between myth and reality. These stories captivate and terrify, drawing us into a world where the line between the mundane and the supernatural blurs. The Antichrist, as a symbol, continues to challenge our perceptions and provoke our imaginations, ensuring that this dark figure remains a powerful and unsettling presence in our collective psyche. In the end, the Antichrist myth is a reflection of the timeless struggle between light and darkness, a narrative that continues to evolve and adapt to the fears and hopes of each generation. Through the power of storytelling, the legend of the Antichrist endures, captivating and haunting us, reminding us of the ever-present shadow that lurks at the edges of our consciousness.